As you get further into computer science and software development, you're going to run into something called GitHub. So this video is to help be an introduction to it and kind of explain basic usage and what it is. So what is GitHub? It's a platform that allows developers to create, store, manage, and share their code. And it's the most popular version control system in the world. So what is version control? Well, that is a system for tracking changes to files over time. So if you have like a system of files and you continuously update it, you can go to a history and see what files have been added, changed, and this can be very useful in the software development process. And having this shared file storage and tracking system can really encourage working on software as a team together because people can input their own files, share their own files, have access to it, pull other people's changes, etc. So let's take a look at the GitHub dashboard. So you can see it on github.com. I have an account here, but you can make your own account, just follow the prompts. These are repositories. So repositories are pretty much just the file systems. They hold all the files that you input into them. And those are the crux of managing your GitHub file controls. So to get started with Git, the first thing you're going to have to do is install it. So there are a few places to install Git, but I believe this here is one of the most popular, git-scm.com. We'll take a look at it. So you can see the website here, and you can see it has downloads for Mac, for Windows. You can just go ahead and download it here, and the wizard should guide you on how to do it. You can also go here to look at the different downloads, and you can see it has it for Linux too. So once you get your download, we need to check if it actually is downloaded. So let's take a look at that. So you can do just about everything in GitHub within your command line. And there are a few basic command line commands that will ease your usage of it. So let me open up the command as you see here. And so the very first command that's very basic, and this just shows the version of software installed on your system. So I already have GitHub installed, so I'm going to type git -v, and V stands for version. And there it tells me the version. Now, if I didn't have that installed, it would say something like git is not a recognized command, and that means your install failed. But as soon as you get this git.v working, then you know that git is installed on your system. So let's continue on. So I mentioned repositories before. So as I said, it's a dedicated storage location pretty much for our projects, files, their code, and their complete revision history, which is immensely useful. Like what if you want to compare to old code or see what changes have been made? You can see all of this through Git, and you can share this revision history with people that you share this repository with. So let's make a repository and to show you just how this works. So I already have a folder made, so I'm going to show you a new command. So this is a very useful command in the command line that will be used quite often. It is cd, and that stands for change directory. And directory references the various files on your computer. So I'm going to change directory to desktop. And now that I am on desktop, I'm going to change directory to this folder I made called git tutorial. And one more command on Windows, if you type dir, you can see what files are inside the current directory you are on this command line. So, as you can see, I have this file called hello world.txt, and it gives you some information about it. So I have this folder that I've navigated to on the command line, and I'm going to type git init. This initializes this file as a repository. Okay, so now let's look at that file I have on there. So here's another command you can use, Notepad, and this is again for Windows. These commands will be different on systems like Linux or Mac. But on Windows, you can simply type Notepad and then the name of the file, since it is a TXT document. So I click that and it opens, and you can just see I have this inside of it. So I'm going to close out. So now I have this folder and it has a file inside, but right now it's just on my local machine. That git init initiated a local GitHub repository, but I can't share that very easily. When I showed you the GitHub dashboard before, I showed you repositories there, and those are called remote repositories, and we want to be able to make one, connect our local repository to the remote repository, and then be able to push all of our files into that repository. So first we want to add our files to be considered for change. So add all of our changed files. And right now our GitHub has nothing. So we want to add that hello world.txt file I have in my folder. So there are different ways to add. So git add is always the base command, and then you can put this A flag, which stands for all, and that stages all changes. There's this dot. So this dot is shorthand for just staging all changes but without deletion. So if you deleted a file, this git add dot dot won't track that deletion. So this git add negative u, this only stages files that the GitHub is already tracking. So if you did a git dot out all before and we added that hello world file, and then we added a new file called goodbye world, and we did git add.u, it would not add that untracked new file. And then you can just do git add and a path to a single file. So that way you can add only one file if you just want to add one thing instead of just everything at once. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to do git add dot. All right, so that it means my changes are added to be committed. So this is the next command that's important. So git commit. So this commits your changes to really be added to the repository. So it checks what you've added, and then you can prepare them for commit with this. This M stands for message, and then you can write an inline, just descriptive message like, this is a new starter, this is the changes I've made. So these messages are really helpful in keeping track of what changes are. And if you go into the history, having a description just can make finding things much easier. So let's do this. Git commit, and I'm going to simply type the message first commit, since this will be the first commit I am pushing to this repository. Oh, I forgot to do the negative in. That's important. And then this tells you what was committed and what was changed. So now we need a local repository. So I'm going to show you how to make a local repository. I believe the easiest way is simply to go to the GitHub website, and you can hit new here. I believe you can hit new here. So let's do this. I'm going to name this repository Git tutorial. You can add a description here. I'm going to pass that. Okay, visibility here. So this decides who can see this repository. I say when in doubt, go private. Public means that everybody can see your repository. It's a lot easier to share this way, but sometimes in your code, you might add secret keys, or especially as you're learning, you might add things that you don't want other people to have access to, links to data, passwords. So when in doubt, do private. Okay, and so let's create this repository. Okay, and you can see it makes a repository here. So it has this link, but here it can give instructions. So if you're unsure of how to connect your local repository, you can simply look at the instructions given when you make a new repository remotely. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to do this. So I've added my files I committed, and now I want to add origin. So this is my remote repository I want to connect my local repository to. And this origin just means this is the main remote repository it will push to. So I copy that here, just as is, and I press enter. So that's it, it's done. Now finally, we want to actually push the files into the remote repository. So that command would be git push -u origin main. So this U flag, it stands for upstream. This means the main remote branch is upstream. It is upstream of everything else. It has the most recent changes, and it just makes pulling easier. So main is the default branch. So you can kind of think of a GitHub like a tree, and the main would be the trunk of our tree, the thing all of the branches are going into, or as a river, all the streams are going into this main river, and it is made default for you. So as you can see, the default name is main. Sometimes it's master, but in this case it's main. So let's type this. Failed to push some rest. All right, so it told me I have an error there. We'll look into that later. But let's see if it pushed. So we can refresh. All right. So let's try making sure, let's follow the instructions here and try making sure we are going into our main branch. Okay, now let's try that push command. Okay, to do that, I push the up arrow twice to do commands I've done previously before. Okay. All right, so that looks like it was successful. Let's refresh. Okay, and now you can see in this remote repository, I have that hello world.txt inside of my remote repository that I'd made. It is that quick. Okay. So I showed you git push. So what if let me go back. So what if there are changes on that branch that in the remote that you don't have on the local? Well, then you can use git pull. So that is a combination of git fetch and git merge. So fetch retrieves all the latest data from the remote repository, and merge merges the data with the files on your current local branch. So I mentioned how main was the main branch before, but you are actually able to make other branches, and I will go into that more later. Okay, so Git branches are very useful. If you're working by yourself, you can continue pushing the main because you are making all the changes. you know exactly what you're putting in there all the time. That's often you will be working on projects with many other people. And so all of these people will have their own changes and their own features that they're working on. And to make that easier, you can work on branches. So a branch is like a copy of the repository, but it has changes that you yourself make. So the main river, you can branch off in a stream and you can add a new feature. So it has everything from the main, but it has a new feature you added. Um, and then later, when you're ready to put everything together, you can push that branch back into the main and add the changes to the main branch. But this way, not everybody is constantly changing the main branch with different things, creating a lot of conflicts, having different files, and it just makes organizing all of this much easier. So let's try to do that. So I'm going to do git branch new branch. Okay, so that made a new branch. And now I want to move to that branch. Right now it is still considered on main. So to move to that branch, I want to type git checkout new branch because that's the branch I've made. So now it says I switched to this branch. So yeah, on newer versions of GitHub, there is this option, git switch, -c new branch name. This is the older version that most people are familiar with, but both of these are good ways to go onto the new branch you want to go to. So let's open. So I'm going to do dir again to see what files I have, and I'm going to do notepad. Okay, and I'm going to type, this is a change I've made on my new branch. And then I will save this. Okay, so how about we try pushing that? So I'm just going to do dot again to add it. Git added more text to hello world. So this, once again, I add my commit message. And then I simply type git push. Okay, so it doesn't like that I didn't set it as upstream. So let's git push. I believe -u will work instead of this set upstream. It means the same thing. Origin, new branch. And as you can see, if you make a mistake, GitHub will often tell you in the command line what you need to do. All right, so now I've pushed these changes to my new branch. So let's take a look at the repository. So I'm going, it says that already, but let's take a look. So it tells me my new branch had some recent pushes, but let's look at the main. So this is my main branch, and let's look at helloworld.txt. As you can see, it has no of my changes, but let's go to new branch. And it tells me I'm one commit ahead of main. I have one change that is different from main, and let's look. And you can see in this branch, this is a change I've made on my new branch. So how do I put that new branch into main? So let's say I'm very happy with the changes I've made in new branch. I believe it's ready to go into the official main branch. Well, to do that, you make a pull request. And the easiest way to do a pull request is to do it straight from the repository on the website. And you can see this big green button, compare and pull requests. So you can add a description here. Right, for this little change, I think my title is enough of a description, but this can help keep track of changes for other people that might be looking at it. But let's create this pull request. So it looks like everything's good. And then we simply type this button, confirm merge. All right, this branch was merged and closed, so I do not need to work on this branch anymore. So let's go back to the main branch. Okay, and you can see it has my message here. It says 2 minutes ago, it explains. Let's look. So I'm on the main branch now, and you can see on the main branch my new changes were added. And look, you can see 3 commits, you can see the history, and all of that. Okay, so sometimes it won't always be perfect, especially if you're working with a bunch of others. Sometimes one person will be working on a file, another person might be working on the same file, and you try to merge them and they both have different changes. And so GitHub will be like, oh no, there's a merge conflict. So it will tell you like, okay, so there's a merge conflict, you have to look at the code and decide what you want to keep. So it will tell you the file and then it will mark where the merge conflict is with these markers. I have an example here. So you can look at the markers and the code and you can simply edit it and decide what you want to keep. So once you edit the file in your editor, decide what you want to keep, you can delete the markers, you can add the file that you just edited, and then you can push your merge conflict free file into the branch. So this will get more complicated. This can be more complicated, but there is a way to solve it if there are different changes. Git is prepared for that. So as you can see, GitHub can get complex. There can be many branches, so you can look at different branching strategies. There are a few online that you might want to look at. If you're working alone and just getting started with Git, you don't have to worry about these as much. But later, as you work on a team, you might want to look deeper into branching strategies. A simple one is just having your main branch as your main production code, the thing that is ready to ship out. A development branch where you test code to see how it all works together before pushing it into main, and then many different branches with different features, which when they are ready and fully tested, you push them into develop, test them there, and then push into main. So I've showed you how to use Git mainly through a command line, and everything can be done in a command line, but sometimes a graphical user interface can be more intuitive and help you learn. So this is just a few suggestions for some GitHub graphical user interfaces that you can take a look at. GitHub Desktop is the official one. SourceTree is an open source graphical user interface, and then you may have seen Visual Studio Code, and it has source control connected to Git, which can make merging, adding, committing more simple. All right. So thank you for sitting through this, learning more about Git. It can go much deeper. If you're interested, you can look at the GitHub docs to see how much you can do. And thank you very much.